You ever watch someone crown themselves queen of a kingdom that was never theirs to begin with? Picture a pearl-white Lexus Karen in a tennis skirt marching up to the actual owner of an entire private lake and demanding he pay her $500 just to stand on his own shoreline. Then she calls the cops when he dares fix his own dock. What happened next didn't just humble her, it erased her little suburban dictatorship in under 10 minutes while the whole neighborhood watched. I inherited Whispering Pines Lake from my grandfather Harlan back in the spring. Grandpa was a quiet, sharp-eyed investor who bought the whole 280-acre parcel right after World War II. Instead of carving it into a cookie-cutter subdivision, he built 10 handsome homes along the shoreline on long-term leases and kept the lake, the beach, and the surrounding woods as private family land managed through a trust. My dad ran it hands-off for decades. When he passed, everything landed in my lap. I'm a civil engineer, blueprints and property lines are my love language, so I did what any sane person would do. I moved into Grandpa's original rustic cabin set back from the water to learn the land myself. For the first few months it was perfect. Quiet mornings on the dock. Evening paddles across water so still it mirrored the pines. The longtime tenants were decent folks who'd been there 30, 40 years. They understood the deal, nice houses on leased lots. But the lake and woods stayed with the family trust. Then the pearl-white Lexus showed up. Vanessa Langford had moved into the biggest house on the point about a year earlier. She was the type who wore white tennis skirts to casual neighborhood walks and spoke in that clipped, overly polite tone that somehow still sounded like a threat. Her husband Brad trailed behind her like a nervous golden retriever who knew he was about to get yelled at for something. My first meeting with Vanessa happened while I was knee-deep in the water inspecting an old stone retaining wall Grandpa built in the 1950s. I heard expensive gravel crunching behind me. "Excuse me," she called out. Voice dripping manufactured authority. Residents aren't allowed to modify community infrastructure without board approval. I turned, water dripping from my hands, and just looked at her. "Board?" She puffed up like a peacock. "Yes. The Whispering Pines Lake Homeowners Association. I'm Vanessa Langford, president. This is my husband Brad, he's treasurer. We formed it 6 months ago to protect property values and maintain standards. Things were getting shabby around here." Her eyes flicked with clear disgust toward my weathered cabin. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead I gave her a polite nod. "Interesting. I wasn't aware of any HOA." "Well, now you are," she said brightly. "All residents must register. There's a $500 initiation fee and $200 monthly dues. It covers lake maintenance, landscaping the common areas, and our legal fund." I gestured at the forest, the lake, the entire shoreline. "And these common areas would be?" "Everything the association manages," she replied, waving vaguely. "The paths, the shoreline, the aesthetic integrity of the community. You'll need to bring your cabin up to Code 2, approved beige palette. Proper storage. No visible watercraft. The initiation fee is already past due. By the way, late penalty applies." She smiled like she'd just done me a huge favor. I smiled back. The kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "I'll look into that. You and Brad have a lovely day." As I walked away I could feel her stare burning into my back. She had just tried to shake down the landlord for access to his own lake. The woman had handed me the dynamite herself. She just didn't know it yet. The first cream-colored envelope appeared in my mailbox a week later, technically mail tampering. But I filed that detail away. Inside was official-looking letterhead featuring a truly hideous clip art swan and the words Whispering Pines Lake Homeowners Aesthetics Association. Vanessa's signature took up half the page. It listed my violations: rustic cabin siding, canoe leaning against a tree, general failure to maintain community standards, 30 days to submit a remediation plan including full exterior repaint and approved beige tones and construction of an approved storage shed. Also, reminder that my $550, with late fee, was now overdue. I scanned it, labeled the folder Vanessa, and drove to the county records office that same afternoon. By Sunday I had the 1947 deed. The original plat map showing one single parcel. Every lease agreement. And the family trust documents. Crystal clear, no subdivision. No legal basis for any HOA. The land was still 100% ours. I paid a quiet visit to old Mr. Alvarez in Lot 7. When I mentioned the HOA, his face fell. She showed up with casseroles and smiles, he said wearily. Next thing we know there's a community meeting with only her, Brad, and the couple from Lot 3. They voted themselves in. Unanimous. She claims she's been sending violation notices about my wife's rose bushes. Says they're disorderly. My wife planted those roses 32 years ago. I've been paying the dues just to keep the peace. $200 a month at my age, it adds up. My blood pressure climbed. She wasn't just annoying me, she was quietly extorting retirees who didn't want drama. I told Mr. Alvarez not to worry and to document everything. Then I waited. Patiently. Like a man who owns the chessboard. Vanessa wasn't satisfied with paper warfare. 2 weeks later I was out in the middle of the lake in my canoe when a shrill voice shattered the morning calm through a megaphone. Resident of Lot 10. Your unregistered watercraft is in violation of association rules. Return to shore immediately. I kept paddling, enjoying the way her voice cracked with frustration as it echoed across the water. The next afternoon Brad showed up at my door clutching a clipboard like it was a shield. Second notice, he mumbled. Not meeting my eyes. Unauthorized lake use. Fine is now $150. Brad, I said calmly. Do you understand what extortion looks like under New York law? He flinched hard. You're charging tenants fees to use a lake you don't own. Based on rules from an organization that doesn't legally exist. As treasurer, you might want to think about that very carefully. He turned the color of old oatmeal and practically sprinted back to the Lexus. The Cold War heated up after that. Weekend mornings brought megaphone announcements of my latest crimes: unapproved dock materials visible, failure to maintain aesthetic harmony. Neighbors started dropping by quietly, scared. Frustrated people who'd been paying their dues out of exhaustion. To each one I gave the same advice: stop paying. Document everything. Wait. My preparations were almost complete. I had satellite imagery with red boundary lines. Every lease, including Vanessa and Brad's, which explicitly forbade them from forming any governing body or levying fees on other residents. And a very amused phone call with the family attorney who called her homemade HOA a beautiful self-built gallows. The Saturday it all detonated. I decided it was time to replace the old rickety dock at my cabin. Materials arrived at dawn. I was halfway through setting new posts when I heard the marching footsteps and the familiar click of expensive shoes on gravel. Vanessa arrived like a general leading a tiny, terrified army, 2 compliant neighbors trailing behind her. She already had her phone to her ear. Yes. Officer. This is the HOA president. There's a trespasser on our common property. He's building an unauthorized structure and he's been harassing residents for weeks. Please hurry. She hung up with a triumphant little smirk. Police are on their way. You're finished. Trespassing. Vandalism. Disorderly conduct, we're pressing every charge. I kept hammering. Okay. Vanessa. Her face twisted in rage at my total lack of panic. She had expected begging. What she got was the distant wail of sirens cutting through the pines. 2 county deputies stepped out of their cruiser a few minutes later looking like they'd already had a long day. Vanessa strode forward in full righteous indignation mode. "Officers. Thank God. I'm Vanessa Langford, president of the Whispering Pines HOA. This man is a tenant who's been nothing but trouble. He's trespassing on common property and destroying the shoreline." Deputy Ramirez, who looked like he'd heard every version of the story, turned to me. "Sir. What's your name? You live here?" "Ethan Brooks. That's my cabin right there. This dock is on my private property, I'm replacing the old one." Vanessa scoffed loudly. "His property? Officers. This entire shoreline is common area managed by the association. He's a delinquent tenant who refuses to pay dues or follow rules." She thrust her sad little binder at them. I stood up, wiping my hands, and picked up my own much thicker binder. "Gentlemen, maybe I can clear this up." I opened it right there on the dock. Certified copy of the 1947 deed. My grandfather purchased the entire 280 acres as one parcel. County plat map, never subdivided. Family trust documents, current sole trustee and manager is me. And this I flipped to the relevant page. Is the lease agreement for Lot 1 signed by Vanessa and Brad Langford. Standard tenant lease. Not ownership. Section 7C explicitly states the lessees shall not form any governing body or assess fees on other residents. I looked straight at Vanessa. By creating this HOA and collecting thousands in unauthorized dues, you are in material breach of your own lease. The silence that dropped over the lake was so complete I could hear a fish jump 50 yards out. Vanessa's face went from smug pink to blotchy purple in real time. Her 2 followers looked like they wanted the earth to swallow them. Deputy Ramirez slowly closed her binder and handed it back. "So let me get this straight," he said, voice flat. "You own the whole lake. The woods. Every inch these houses sit on. Every square foot." He turned to Vanessa. "Ma'am, it appears you're the one who's trespassing. You left your leased property to harass the actual owner on his private land while he improves it. And this," he tapped her binder, "is essentially a fraudulent shakedown operation." Vanessa opened her mouth. Nothing came out except a small, strangled sound. The deputy continued. "You and your friends are going to go back to your houses right now. This association is done. You do not contact Mr. Brooks again unless it's to pay your actual rent on time. Next call we get out here about you, you're the one getting cited." She gave the tiniest, defeated nod. The queen had been dethroned in front of her subjects by the man whose land she thought she ruled. The following Saturday I sent a simple, professionally printed invitation to all 10 houses. When everyone gathered at the lakeside pavilion, even Vanessa and Brad, standing rigid at the back like they were attending their own funeral, I kept it short. I introduced myself as the sole trustee. Explained the trust, the leases, the actual rules. There is no HOA. Never was. The only governing document is the lease you already signed. Pay rent on time. Don't damage the property. Be decent neighbors. That's it. Then I dropped the second bomb. I know some of you have been paying fees to an organization that no longer exists. I can't force anyone to return money already collected. But I will be crediting every tenant's account for the full amount paid over the last 8 months. It'll be deducted from future rent. Mr. Alvarez actually teared up. The collective exhale from the group sounded like the whole neighborhood had been holding its breath for months. Finally I looked straight at the back row. For the residents of Lot 1, your lease is in material breach. You have two options. 1. Voluntarily terminate within 60 days. No penalty. 2. Sign a new lease that explicitly forbids forming any representative bodies or levying fees. Any future violation means immediate eviction proceedings. You have 1 week to decide in writing. A moving truck pulled up to the big house on the point exactly 37 days later. They didn't even wait the full 60. The pearl white Lexus disappeared down the road for good, followed by a very quiet, very defeated-looking Brad. Whispering Pines Lake is peaceful again. The roses are blooming brighter than ever. I finished my dock. And every time I paddle out onto that glassy water I catch myself smiling at the memory of the woman who called the police on the king of the castle, only to learn she'd been renting a room in it the whole time. Let that be a lesson to every little tyrant in a tennis skirt, before you start building your empire on someone else's land. Maybe double-check the deed. Now I want to hear from you. If you were one of the long-time residents quietly paying this woman's fake dues just to avoid drama, would you have kept your head down and paid up? Or would you have waited for the real owner to drop the hammer? And more importantly, who's really in the wrong here? The entitled HOA Karen drunk on imaginary power? Or the quiet system that keeps letting these neighborhood dictators rise until someone finally pushes back? Drop your thoughts below. Let's talk.